Welcome to problem 6 of chapter 10, patient charges. So it wants us to write a class named patient that has all of this crap inside it. Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to do it. Just not going to do it. Why? Because this is basically the exact same thing we did earlier in the personal information one. So I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go on to this next one here, which is write a class named procedure that has the name of the procedure, the date, the name of the practitioner, and the charges for the procedure. And so the initializer should have an argument for each of those, and then write a program that has all of this data in it and then prints it out. Okay, so it should display information about all three of the procedures. And then we're going to talk about this one and the total charges of the three procedures. I've already written this code because, you probably don't want to just sit there and watch me type the same thing over and over again, because that's really what I'm doing. But here's my procedure class. It takes a name, the date, the doctor, and the charges, just like it said. And then it sets it into these, data attributes here. And then we have the string representation. Output the name in a column 20 characters wide, left aligned. The date, 10 characters wide, left aligned. The doctor is 15 characters, left aligned. And then here's an interesting one. Self charges is right aligned after the colon. That greater than sign means move it to the right. Make it 10 characters wide, and then also print that it's a float, okay? Because we're going to print that it's a float, because $250, right? So actually, let's put some dollars in there. So I'll put dollars on that. Here I'm creating a list of procedures. Rather than creating them one at a time, I'm actually creating an entire list of procedures. So here's my open list, and here's my close list. And I'm setting this list into the variable procedure. So now that I have this list going on, I create a procedure on each line just because it's nice and short and I can see it. So here's the name, the date, the doctor, and the charges. And then I just loop over those procedures, loop over the procedures, and then for each procedure in it, I print it out. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Here it goes. Boom, boom, boom. So here's that printed out thing. Oh, look, there's that dollar sign hanging out over there. That's how it shows up on bills, so I'm okay with that, I guess. I don't like bills. Anyway, so here they are. I mean, I like people named bills. Some of my best friends are named Bill, but I don't like, getting bills in the mail. So anyway, so here's my list of three things, and then it wants me to print the total at the bottom. So how do I get the total of these three procedures? Well, what I want is to be able to get the charges out of each of these objects. So inside each of these objects is the charge, okay? And I want to be able to get that out. Now I have a real reason to write a getter, an accessor. I want to be able to get the charges for this procedure, because right now I don't have anything. I have an init method and I have a string method. And even though these are just data attributes and I could access them, because they have an underscore, I'm agreeing to the contract that those are private variables. And so I should not write procedure.charges. That is not what I should do. I should not do that. I should only interact with the public interface or the methods of this class. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do def get charges like this. Self, and then I can return self.charges. So now that I have that, I can actually get the charges from each of these procedures. Okay, so what I can do is do something like this. Total is equal to 0 for procedure in procedures, like that. I don't want that string. For procedure in procedures, I want to do total plus equal procedure dot get charges, like that. And then after that, I can do print total. And then, I'll do, I'll just do $, and then total.2f, just like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So this is going to print out the total. I'm going to hit play. And oh, look at that. Why did it turn out like that? Can you see the problem that I've got over here? What's the problem? Why did it show up like this and not actually give me a number? Can you spot it? Can you spot the problem? The problem is I'm using this right here, the curly braces, but I haven't made this an F string. So I need to make that a formatted string. That's what the F stands for, formatted string. So I play it again, and now I can see $950. That's all that crap added up. Okay, so there we go. That's how I can do it. However, I want to point out that there's another way to do this, okay? And it has to do with list comprehensions and the sum method, okay? So what I want to do is I want to take this list and I want to turn it from a list of procedures to a list of the charges. So if I do something like this, if I do charges like this, I can do procedure.getCharges for procedure in procedures. Remember, our list comprehension is like a for loop. So it's going to be looping over each of those procedures, and then it calls the getCharges. And so once it's here, once it's at this point, these are now numbers. These are floats or integers or whatever. And so now this is going to become a list of integers. I hope this makes sense. This is what list comprehensions are for. So I'm going to go ahead and put a breakpoint here so we can look at charges and see what that looks like. I'll run my Python debugger, and we'll move this over to the side because I'm not interested in this part. So let's take a look over here. You can see our charges are 250, 500, and 200, because what it did when it ran this code was it looped over procedures. Then for each procedure in that list, it called getCharges. And so what does getCharges do? It returns the value inside that object. It returns the charges value. And so the first entry here is 250 because it called getCharges on this object and returned 250. The second one is 500. And so it called getCharges on the second object and returned 500. And then on the third one, it's 200 because it called getCharges on this object and it returned the 200. So I've changed the list. I mapped the list. I transformed the original list into a new list. Remember, these list comprehensions leave the original list alone. So you can see procedures is still there, and it's still got those 3 procedures object. If I open it up, you can see here's that third one. Here's that one for the blood test with Dr. Smith. That's $200. You can see that's still inside the procedures. Instead, it created a new list that only contains the values that are here. And so procedure.getCharges turns each procedure, takes that procedure, says, give me the money out of you, and that's the value that I'm going to put inside here. Okay? So now the question is, how can I do, what can I do with this list? Well, I can loop over the list and get the total. Or if I wanted to, I could do total is equal to sum, which is a built-in function. It returns the sum of an iterable. So if I pass in a list here, it's going to sum up all the things inside the list. So I can do sum charges like that. And now if I run it, and I'm going to move that, I'm going to turn that breakpoint off, and I just run it normally, it's going to print out something. What did it not print out here? Why? Okay, I'm going to run this again. Boom. There it is, 950. So it's printing out the total from mapping the charges and getting the total. As a matter of fact, most Python programmers would take this list comprehension, put it inside the sum call. I know that I have said in the past that, you should only do one thing at a time. But what we do here is, for Python programmers, we look at this sum and we're like, okay, in my brain, I know I'm going to sum something, and then it's going to be a list. I see it's a list, but it's not just a list, it's a list comprehension. So what am I summing? I'm summing the charges for the procedure in the procedures. Okay, so I'm summing the money. I'm summing all of that money together, and that gives me the total. So now when I run it like that, you can see it's still total $950. And so this is a much more Python way of doing it than having that original loop. So there you go. Problem number 6. I wanted to show you this little hack here because it might be something in the homework.